Hi, this is Jordi from Agents at Work. Today, we are with Aiswarya from Intelligence. Hi, Aiswarya.
Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Aishwarya.
How are you doing today?
Great. How about you?
Yeah, doing well too. I'm really excited about this conversation. What is intelligence?
Yeah, Intelligence, we're building AI engineering agents so that large engineering teams don't have to handle all of the overhead and banal work that you have to do. And you can actually work on just building cool products. So a little bit of background. Essentially, the larger engineering team gets, the more like performance reviews, the more status updates, the more code reviews, the more knowledge sharing, the more team syncs, kind of all of that start to compound. And it kind of takes out a lot of the joy of just being able to sit on your own and hack and build cool things. So our goal really is to kind of build these agents that can go in and run your engineering team and all of those operations so that you can just work on building and enjoying being an engineer.
Okay, so in that context, what's an AI agent?
Yeah, an AI agent is actually, in my opinion, something that can take a fairly open-ended task. So it can be something like what we do a documentation agent, right? So it's able to say, okay, here's a code base. Um, I want to either create tutorials or I want to create, you know, just internal documentation. It's able to take that kind of idea and then make a plan, right? Figure out how to do it, run a lot of actions or tools, etc. Go through it, check its own work, come up with kind of an output, maybe interface with the human. So it's kind of this element of decision making, planning, and executing with a set of capabilities and a certain goal or outcome in mind, at least in my perspective.
Something that you said that's already really different to most of the people that I talked previously is that you said like software engineering teams. So this is not only from one developer, but it's actually when there are like multiple people cooperating creating software. I see a lot of vibe coding in Twitter, and they seem to be the only one in the team just pushing things around. So how is intelligence different?
Yeah, yeah. So 100% from day one, we realized like engineering is a team sport, right? So a lot of the big issues with vibe coding is that now engineers don't really actually end up knowing what is in the code base, right? Because before at least one person, if you manually spent the effort writing the code, you probably have some recollection of what it is. But if you vibe code it, you probably don't. So that's become like a more and more of an issue of like, okay, now no one is necessarily the author of this code, right? You can't go to one person and say, hey, explain this to me. How do I do this? How do I do that? So with that, there's a few problems that arise, right? One, code reviews become more and more important. AI can vibe code a lot of subtle bugs, issues into your code that you are no longer really responsible for in terms of like, you kind of are, obviously, but that kind of like issue bug management is like different. And the second thing is docs is important, like explaining at a high level how things are built and why they're built so that someone else can understand what you just vibe coded and build on top of that. I think the third thing also is now kind of random metrics like number of PRs or lines of code are going to become even more meaningless than they were before. And kind of to understand how engineers are contributing, being able to actually figure out like the impact, the value they're bringing to the team is going to be more and more important. So we think the whole kind of idea of how engineers contribute and that whole performance system is going to be very different in the future. So yeah, I think there's all of those are very much for engineering teams and kind of get overlooked in building tools for individual engineers to just build.
Okay, is this your first company? How did you come about with the idea?
It's actually my second. So the first one I was B2C, kind of building a Perplexity like product for individuals to understand the news better. It was great, but we built it before GPT, so it was super hard to scale and market. And B2C is obviously its own space altogether. And I was building that while I was doing my day job, essentially. So just kind of nights, weekends, evenings, like 24/7. Um, and then it just kind of made me realize like that was so much more fun than what I was doing every day. We could ship so much faster. And it made me very, very aware of all of the things that were slowing down engineering development in these teams, right? So that's when I realized like this is a massive problem. Every large engineering org is going to face this. Even if coding becomes faster, that doesn't mean getting these 10, 20, 30 engineers to work together is going to become that much faster. And that's kind of what we're seeing, right? Is the engineering orgs that we talk to right now are like, okay, great, we have this tool now that can help us write code faster, but what about something that'll actually help us catch bugs or something that's going to tell us who's doing what? kind of all those different parts of the puzzle. There's room for AI to actually go in and help with that too. So that's kind of when they reach out to a company like us.
And back then, did your daily job was part of a big team or it was like a small company?
No, it was big. I was at Uber, right? So I was part of Uber Freight. So it's like they work on trucking, which is not as well known as obviously the ride sharing app, but yeah, it's about 500 engineers. I think anyone who's worked in big tech knows that like you are a engineer in like a field of a ton of engineers, and yeah, there's just so many problems that come up with this, like knowing who's doing what and resource allocation, all sorts of glad to
Yeah.
not be in big tech.
Yeah, I was asking because there are many people who never work in this kind of environment, so they don't understand exactly what the problems are. Because they say like, well, for me, like now I am able to write code much faster. I'm able to deploy it, check, like I just use Lovable and the website is up. So why do I need something for Teams? What do you think that are the main blockers in Teams that do not apply when there is only one person?
Yeah, I mean, I think as soon as you get to a team of like 4 or 5 people, you want to have code reviews, right? Because at that point, unless you're like a one person shop where you like write and read everything you do, once you have a few people collaborating, it's like very important for other people to see what code is written, for you to go in and try to figure out if this code works best with other code. So that whole part is kind of the first entry point of where we come in, is like catching those issues in your code. So yeah, I think anyone from like a 5 person up team can use that and leverage that. And then from there, documentation's also something people like a lot is yeah, you kind of see LLMs understanding things, but if you are going to try to architect or figure out or plan how to build something, you do need a good understanding of how the system is built, how things are updating. And one thing that we really focus on is just making sure that it stays continuously up to date. As you vibe code new features every other day, making sure that the docs that you wrote 2, 3 weeks ago don't stay stale, essentially.
I mean, up-to-date documentation sounds like a dream. So thank you very much for making it.
I think that the key is just like with every PR, it goes through your PR and it goes through your docs and makes a change. Like it's very much the dream of like, yeah, having an engineer who documents everything they write, but now you get the AI to do it instead.
Do you use intelligence for building intelligence?
Yeah, of course, of course. We've been iterating with our code review with internally like since day one. Initially, it would like not catch anything, and we were like annoyed with this. But over time now, it makes your code quality better. And what we've realized is it actually holds you to better practices. Like there's a lot of things with the frameworks or code bases, etc., that we're using that we don't actually pay attention to or never like bothered reading the ORM language best practices, right? And it can catch those and help you get better. And it just makes, yeah, in a small team, no one person has the time to sit there and review everything. You kind of just want to be shipping all the time. So it kind of takes that off our plate.
How do people interact with your service? Because for me, AI for coding is something that lives in the editor. How is your product? How people access it? Where is it? Like, is it in like GitHub? It's like in your repository. Where does it live?
Yeah, so we do have things in your IDE. So you can essentially get our code reviews within Cursor, within VS Code, within any IDE. I think one interesting phrase that someone mentioned is like it's an auditor for your code. So essentially, like you have Cursor coming up with stuff, you need something to cross check it and like fix its issues. I feel like the biggest issue I have with these things is like it never builds. It has like a billion build issues half the time. So we're able to go in and kind of just catch all those errors, any things that it overlooks when it's just trying to generate code. So it's kind of that third person or third AI agent that is able to look over what you do. So yeah, we do have it both in your editor for kind of real-time reviews as well as within GitHub, GitLab, etc., so that you can see the reviews within that platform. And then obviously we have a website. That's where you kind of see all the docs. You can chat with kind of full MCP support, and also kind of this for managers, they can kind of get the whole overview of like what the team is shipping, how progress is going, and so forth.
Okay, so that's already at the age of software development itself, like from the point of view of engineering. And then there's like the managers that say like, well, when there's a team of engineers here building stuff, we need to like, it's like product, like, are we building in the right direction? Who is doing what? So they usually don't code that much, like they are not in the editor, but they have a website where they can go and see what people are doing.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So actually, like this was not a use case we had initially built for, but one company actually found us on their own, and They messaged us once when something broke, and they were like, all of our PMs use this platform to know what the hell our engineers are building every day. And they use it within Slack. So we also have a Slack integration where you can kind of ask our agent any question about your engineering system. We thought we were building it for engineering support channels like, team/help, and then you can ask it. Essentially, no, they had like all of their operations team, their support team, their PMs, their designers, etc., using it to get questions about what engineering has worked on without having to bother an engineer for all those things. So yeah, it's kind of that's the main goal, right? Is we want to make information super transparent to the entire org.
Okay, and when you mentioned documentation, where does that documentation live? Is it like only for internal things? Is for like external people who are using an API?
Yeah, we have full support now, right? So we initially built it within our product. So we have like a Notion editor where you can go in and we generate the docs, and then you can go and edit, add new sections, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think as of like yesterday, we added like an export button. So you can export it to Markdown, you can export it to Google Docs, Notion, Confluence. Yeah, I think a lot of companies, it's crazy how poorly managed their like Confluence documentation is. One large company famously told me that if they deleted 95% of their Confluence docs, most of the team wouldn't even notice, which is hilarious. So I think essentially just being able to actually keep it up to date, run it through our system, and then now we just hydrate it wherever you're most familiar having your docs, and then you can also keep it in our platform if you want.
It's one of the steps for making all these things work. Sounds like a big problem by itself. So, for example, if we have a lot of documentation, it's not only like we need it up to date, but we need to find the relevant one for the context and then actually like apply it. How does intelligence help there?
Yeah, so obviously we actually started off with code-based context search essentially, like being able to do universal search across your code, across your docs, across your issues, etc. So yeah, that's kind of what we spent our first like few months doing. And then yeah, we use that for our code reviews, we use that for this all of these integrations. It's kind of elaborate agentic hybrid RAG search. Yeah.
Okay. So you basically take the code, index it, maybe like add some context there, and then whenever there's a query, it's able to bring like the relevant things and navigate it and provide value from what's already there. That's pretty useful. I'm sure that many product owners are going to find this really, really useful, that they don't have to go and ask an engineer, how does this work exactly? Like check the code and tell me. But actually being able to ask the system, like, how does this work right now? Like when a user pays, do we send the invoice before or after recording this other event in the database? And being able to have an answer there, like, can unlock a lot
Yeah,
of
of course. Yeah.
speed.
I think, again, it was something that I remember. In large tech companies, you can spend your whole day just answering people's support questions and feel like you've been productive. And it just, yeah. So I think things like that we wanted to make sure that our AI system's able to do for you.
Yeah, most of the time you're actually being productive, but they are like taking you from other things that you could do. And now with AI, you can do the things that AI cannot do. Plus, support and product owners are able to learn and get the answers that they need.
Yeah, of course.
So, does it work with any programming language?
We built like customized ASDs for the top 20 programming languages. It works for everything, but it will perform best on everything Python, Go, Java, C, like pretty much the top 20 most used languages. If you're coming up with something completely left wing, it'll work as well as like a GPT works, but we don't have customized support for it.
You mentioned now like some models. So when you started, you had to choose a model. Did that decision change during time, or you stick with the one that you started with?
Of course, of course. I think one thing that our community likes the most actually is every time a new model drops, we have an open source PR review eval bench essentially where we put different models against each other, right? So one post that got a lot of traction was us comparing DeepSeek versus Claude and 3.5 and DeepSeek for code reviews, and DeepSeek actually did better by a good margin. And yeah, that was super interesting. We now incorporate DeepSeek into our platform. I mean, I think one of the obvious things everyone like is on top of is making sure that with all of these model updates, you kind of keep the latest in your system, and then make sure it kind of works seamlessly with what's latest.
Is this something that users then can choose what kind of model they want for the question, or how do they interact with this?
Yeah, no, super interesting they ask. We actually are launching next week this whole human PR eval leaderboard. So it's one thing for LLMs to say which code review is the best, but similar to Berkeley's LLMsys leaderboard where they compare different models, we're doing the same thing for code review. So you can take any two models, put it together on the same PR, and then see which model's outputs you like the most. So yeah,
Okay.
if you're kind of curious about whether, 3.7 thinking is better than O4 is better than O3, O4, yeah, O3 mini, etc. Please check that out. It'll be fun. We're excited. Our goal is to try to get thousands of reviews so that we can really converge on which model performs the best.
What kind of code can they review? Like, do I have to submit code there? Or it's like the typical thing where I go to a page, I'm shown some code and two reviews, and I have to choose.
Yeah, so we have a website. You can pull from any of your own code reviews or any popular open source repository. You choose a PR, and then it goes through that PR and it will reviews the code in the PR and then tells you the comments that are left per model. And then you go through and look at that, choose which comments you think are more relevant, and from there you vote.
And this assumes that people know which one is better. How do you deal with this? It's like if most of the people think that the left one is better, like then the left one is better, or
Yeah, you just vote. It's just like literally a one, each person makes their own decision, no influence. You don't know which model's which. So we're trying to keep it completely unbiased.
when I think about PRs, what comes to my mind is that usually there are a lot of changes. Sometimes some of them are bundled. Sometimes there's like a lot of layers. Like it's an infrastructure thing, it's a database thing, it's on the business layer. And then PRs that are like really, really big, everything gets mixed. So there's a lot of feedback on, say, like this may bring the database to a lock. So please, like make this in another PR, these kind of things. How does your product deal with this stuff?
Yeah, so essentially what it does is it takes all the context in the PR. It will search the code base if it needs context on anything else, using a lot of GitHub search, and then pulls all of that context into consideration and kind of evaluates each of the code chunks and figures out like what fixes should be made.
This is already like a long dream, but did you think about like incorporating metrics and things like that? So I have seen like in really big teams, performance matters. And then most of the time you cannot see it from the code itself because you need to say, like, well, is this like a hot part of the code or not? Like, let me see how it's running. Is there any feedback loop for this, or right now it's the people who are doing it, and you think that eventually your product will get there too?
You mean performance for the code or performance for the engineers?
For the code in this case. So basically, like many times I do a PR and then it goes like pushback saying like, dude, you cannot do this here. This is broken. This is too slow. You cannot access the database 10 times per query. This is an n+1 problem, blah, blah, blah. Most of them, like they are able to catch it from the code, but there is some other part that it's actually like you need to know how the system is running to decide is this good enough or not? I guess that the model right now doesn't have context about that, but I was just wondering if actually like it does.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously there's like standalone GitHub actions and so forth that you can run on your PR that will kind of auto run latency tests on things. That's not what we're focusing on right now. It will obviously go through your coding, what you've written, and kind of analyzes best practice or not. So if you do something like make the same call 10 times, it will catch that and tell you. But we are doing kind of mini sandboxed environments to make sure that like lint works and we write like tests and so forth. So all of that runs in like a mini sandbox. But for things like latency, right now it doesn't just because often that requires calling other system services and requires more of a Dockerized container solution for your entire product to kind of get those metrics. So you can't really just do that on a PR by PR level.
Yeah, a lot of time like you actually need access to production metrics that they are not living where your repository is to make the right call there. Right now, what are the features that people like the most, and what are the most requested one that you say like, well, if I had a magic wand and I could just make that happen, I would.
Yeah, what do people like the most? I think code reviews are the one that code reviews and docs are two of the ones that have like people use the most. We also have a in-page chat support for teams. So like if you like a few of our companies use that. It's like you have your documentation, you put out a little chat widget in your docs, and then it's able to answer any question about your engineering stack, system, open issues, PRs, etc. So yeah, essentially, one of the most requested features was actually docs, was what you're mentioning. It's just like, can you continuously update my Confluence or my Notion? Um, it's it's um it's a large problem for enterprise because I remember like yeah, you write something in Confluence once and then you're not even finding it again. Like someone else. I don't. I remember they didn't have great search back then, and It was just kind of a mess. I don't know why people still use it, but essentially we were just working with the environments that people work with. So yeah, you can generate the entire documentation on our site. You can edit it as you please. It'll keep updating, and then now we just have a continuous export update flow into those other documentation hosting sites.
So it sounds like it's like a multi-step thing, no? Like one is like me as an engineer, I need to create some code, so I need the right context to create this new feature. But then the reviewer is actually saying like, well, I have another context. Does this code do what it should do? And then there is another one that is like, well, I want to use that code. How should I use it? With people, it's really clear for me why there are these levels, no? Because me as an engineer who knows about payments, maybe I am touching something about another microservice, and someone else has that context. However, here, like the same model is the one that it's doing the PR versus writing the code. So do things get caught at PR time, or it just iterates at writing the code time, and then when it comes, it's already clean?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that we right now we kind of work with a lot of companies that use a lot of Cursor and etc. And it essentially these models right now they write whatever code will kind of get something to work. So like you see a lot of not great best practices, you see a lot of like poor error handling, all of those types of things. Because essentially, if you want that, you have to specifically have the model think about it, catch it, factor it in. It needs to take context from other parts of the code. So really for all of these things, we see that layers of reflection after generation is super important. It's not really doing that in real time. So yeah, I think actually with the rise of AI generated code reviews have become even more important because as mentioned, people, if you spent 1 minute getting AI to auto generate a ton of code, a human is not going to now spend like 30 minutes going in and trying to catch issues, right? So we're trying to be able to combat that with a tailor-made solution that will audit and fix all the issues.
Okay, so in this case, like the engineers are using something like Cursor, and they are using like a plain model for generating the code. Intelligence there helps by providing the right context, but it's not your models the one that are writing the code.
Yeah, so we're not doing the code generation, right? So what we do is we, as I said, it's
Okay.
kind of like that auditor for your setup, right? Instead of you going in and trying to catch all the bugs in the generated code, you can use our system to do that. And what we do is we kind of learn over time, right? What are your company's best practices? What are the things that are really causing issues? We search across different code bases. We search across other PRs to see if there's going to be a conflict. It kind of does that comprehensive review to make sure that there aren't kind of breaking issues or bugs in the code you've written, right?
That's
There's a
actually
reason
super
people don't
interesting.
write cursor code and straight to deploy to prod because there's generally a lot of these issues and bugs that you need to fix first.
Something that caught my attention right now is that you said that you check other PRs that are open in the moment to see if there is any conflict there.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually have this feature called similar PRs. Yeah, what that does is it like given your current PR, it'll search if there are other PRs that are related to that change. And then search through that and see if there's like any potential conflicts or issues.
I still have nightmares from once that I merged something in a Django code and then I fucked up because the migration had the same number as someone else who was doing another migration. Could this be something that you could have saved
Yeah,
me from?
of course, yeah. We
Okay.
catch that a lot of times. I think one thing that happened often is we're trying to maintain full GitHub GitLab parity. So now if something changes in GitLab and you're working on a GitHub change, it like flags you and says, "Hey, this kind of feature was updated. Make sure that's like maintained in the GitHub or GitLab version as well." So things like that, like, as I said, come up when you're working in a team, not so much as an individual, but are still real problems nonetheless.
Are there any limitations right now that you see in the models that you think that is going to be solved in the next like 6 to 9 months and would make your life easier?
One really annoying thing with these models is they are super pedantic, right? Like if you ask it to review code, it will find 30, 40, 50, 100 things wrong with your code. But humans don't care about every line being perfect, right? So one thing is just like we've kind of built this whole orchestration to continuously teach it and help it refine. So that is I don't know if it's something you can do in the model layer, but it's kind of more on that agentic side of things is like can you just having better ways to teach it from feedback in terms of this is the context, this is the feedback, this is what you generated. Based on all of that, like actually learn what the issue was and try to like mimic a human as well as possible.
Yeah, they are really good at generating stuff. So if you ask them, they will keep like spitting out more and more stuff. And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
you
this.
can review the same PR 30 times and I'll keep giving you more comments every single time you review it. So that was definitely something we had to address is like, where do we get to the point where we force it to say looks good to me, and gives you a thumbs up? So
Okay, and this is like through prompt engineering?
no, it's actually a lot of kind of just, as I said, giving it a lot of historical data. So use your product for like 2 weeks and gives it thumbs up, thumbs down. It'll track of which comments you're accepting versus not accepting. And based on all of that, it kind of learns your comment style and uses that for kind of future comments.
Okay, so this is really, really cool. If I understand this properly, the product learns from the team that is actually doing the reviews and then
Mhm.
tries to match that. So it's not the same experience for all the.
Yeah, no, it isn't. And I think this is something we learned kind of fairly like a few months into building this is that you can give the same product to two different companies. One will accept 70% of your comments, one will accept 20. And that's really because every engineering team has a different engineering culture at the end of the day, right? Some will be like, I want you to follow every single Django best practice or every single React best practice. We're not merging code until you do. Other ones are way more lax. They're just like, if you can put a screenshot that tells me that this does what it does, you can merge whatever you want. So what that's kind of one thing we realized is like for at the end of the day, we want you to enjoy using our reviews. Obviously, if you do that, you're more likely to actually accept the comments, you're most likely to engage and work with us. So that's one thing we realized is like for that company who doesn't care about 80% of best practices, how can we learn that and only show them the 20% that they do care about? So that's been something we've like definitely learned over time as well.
Do you see any kind of patterns on who are the first one adopting this kind of tools? Like it's like deep tech that they say like, well, this is really, really important, or it's like even like big companies like I don't know Mercedes or Bosch that they say like, well, we have some engineering team. We're not an engineering company as software, but we need to deal with this, so better have the best
It's
products.
interesting. I think it's a mix. I would say it's probably a little bit more of the longer tail of engineering companies because, yeah, you can kind of think of it as like the engineers who think they're like the cream of the crop are much more resistant to kind of AI feedback, I would say. Because they think they're the best already, and I think that kind of permeates into those types of engineering cultures too. But then, yeah, engineers who are just like they're trying to build product to get a company moving forward. They want this time off their hands so that they can focus on delivering value.
What about the tone? Like I know some people that when they review my code, they were pretty, pretty harsh. Would
Yeah,
your
yeah, that's a
tone
that's
hurt
that's
my
a
feelings?
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think one company working with the like the head of their engineering org actually purposefully told us like you have to give the engineer some positive feedback every now and then. It's funny that you mention it. It's not something that you think about right
Funny.
away, but like if you're continuously going to say, "Hey, fix this, fix that," like it's almost like if you were a human reviewer, right? You would want to make the person feel good, like a job for spending a week on this PR. Before I tell you the 100 things that are wrong with it, I want to kind of so yeah, that is definitely something we factor in. We have this whole feature called sprint assessments where at the end of every sprint we give every engineer on the team like badges and rewards and that kind of highlight their main contributions for the week. So
Okay, that's pretty nice. Like it's some kind of gamification.
yeah, kind of. It's mainly just to highlight the good work you're doing as well as kind of give you that constructive feedback along the way as well.
What has been the feedback on that? Like people like it. Like they say, like, wow, this is
Yeah,
so
it's
cool.
really
Like
funny. People like it a ton. Like I think that's one main thing that I've learned about like, human I don't know, like
yeah, the behavior.
or yeah, psychology, yeah, is that it's I think there's like a famous study on this actually. Like I think it was a monkey, like a baby monkey is like more attached to the parent if okay, I think this as the study was extreme. It was like this they had like a cage, like a robotic cage mom and the cage mom would either zap the bunny or the monkey or give it a treat and the monkey was like more attached to that one than the one that kept giving it treats or something. So it's there's something in your psychology where like not knowing if you're going to get a reward or like I guess in this case it's just feedback on your code, but it creates a stronger bond.
Yeah. After all these years of evolution, there's still like some monkey behavior.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's one thing that a lot of people building AI tools don't like think of from day one. It's like accuracy and all that is super important, but at the end of the day, like you're building a tool that has to like get user engagement, and that is the same with like any B2C like social media app. It's like how do you tap into what people care about and like their reward systems and all that. Yeah, same
Yeah.
with these kind of like AI tools.
So something that is really interesting is like all these companies have been trying to measure productivity for like decades now. And it's really, really hard. At the beginning, they did what you said about lines of code. And now, like I am crashing that metric. So it's not important anymore because the AI generates most of it for me. With intelligence, how do they like, I guess like when they're like big companies, not all the company embraces it at once. So usually like you have to do like B2B, but to some small team, and then they start crushing it. And the other people start saying like, hey, why are they so productive? Is this usually how adoption goes?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Like we've sold to like 1,000 person engineering orgs. It's definitely kind of team by team. And yeah, I think what you mentioned with the whole lines of code, we've actually been using our PR reviews to give like more meaningful metrics for engineering teams in terms of like going through all of your PRs, actually kind of coming up with metrics on like features built and impact of those features and complexity of the changes and all of that, so that you're actually rewarded for something that's meaningful, right? So that's been a huge thing too. Is like for these engineering teams, as I said, right? AI can write way more code than you ever could, but you still have to be the person kind of directing it and making sure it's like building things right and actually building impactful things for the team. So actually measuring that, I think, will become way more important for engineering orgs than trying to measure, okay, this person had AI generate 10 times more code than this person. That's no longer going to be a meaningful metric. That's kind of why we are putting a lot of effort and initiative into that space as well, is making sure that as these things change, that kind of engineering evaluation, performance, all of that stays valuable as well.
I don't have any data about this, but I imagine that now open source repositories are getting more PRs than ever because it's so easy to start. Is this the case?
Maybe. I don't know actually. I've not pulled any of these metrics, but I would say it still takes time because yeah, people it still takes time for people to adopt. Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. It might be. That'd be a very interesting metric to pull.
I was asking because I think that you can be a really good shield for all these poor like open source developers that they have been like maintaining repositories for years. And then
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the
we
blue.
partner with a lot of open source because we have a whole suite of tools for them, right? We can do code reviews, we can help engineers onboard to their platform, we can give them stats on like how the code base is changing and who's contributing. So yeah, we actually have a lot of open source partners, and would
That's
love if you're an open source, like we can kind of help you manage your operations better.
well, that's really cool. Like I know like, I'm going to send like these scripts to multiple people because they're going to be like really, really happy about they are
Yeah.
making their life easier. So they always appreciate that. Okay, so if I'm a company, how do I know that I need intelligence?
Yeah, I think the first one, if you don't have a code review tool, you should get one. Like at this point, every company who's trying to get one for code generation, code review, we can help out with that. If you still use any sort of outdated metrics for engineering analysis productivity, you should use us. We can kind of handle all of your perf reviews, sprint assessments, tell you how engineering teams are actually adding value in a way that is useful for both engineers because they get their work evaluated fairly and just saves all that overhead for doing performance. And same with that. If you have that kind of problem where you have a lot of junk in your Confluence and no one knows what's where and how things work and where to search for it, that's also somewhere our agents can help out. So if any of those sound like you, yeah, please reach out. Intelligence, Aiswarya at intelligence.ai or info at intelligence, or you can start off with a free trial on our website.
Excellent. So thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure having you as a guest. Looking forward to hear more about what you're building.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me,
Have a good
Jordi.
one.
Awesome.
Bye.